Broadcasting from Studio 202 at the Springett Technology Center in Navasota, Texas, it's NOV Live. Now, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome. We have a really exciting show for you today. We're continuing the conversation on CCUS from last episode, where we talked about the focus on small emitters. But we're going to be talking about coatings and their applications with CCUS. So thank you so much for joining us. We have some really excellent guests. I can't wait to introduce you to them. But before we do, I have a little trivia question, and it's kind of usually a little bit on the topic. So again, we're talking about coatings and CCUS. So my question for you today is, what is the total annual cost of corrosion in the oil and gas industry? So again, that would be in a dollar amount. If you think you know what the total annual cost of corrosion in oil and gas is, go ahead and put that in the comments wherever you're watching, whether it's on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter, and we'll see if anybody can get that answer right. We'll reveal it at the end. And while you're in the comment section, if you happen to have a question for either of our experts that we have here live on the show today, go ahead and comment that too. And like I said, we're here in the studio. We're here to answer your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the episode. So again, thank you for joining. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our two experts that we have here in the studio. We have Andreas and Reza. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I want to start off. Do you mind both telling the audience a little bit about yourselves and what you do here at NOV? Eric?
Yeah, sales manager for the Zaplock Connection and KC Connection product lines. And then I also support a lot of what we do for our line pipe services.
Yeah. I provide global technical support for our coating product line. Historically, most of our work has been in the oil and gas industry, but now with the push to become carbon neutral, we're branching out into geothermal applications and then obviously CCUS. Right.
And do you mind, I'll pose this to either of you, a quick, maybe broad overview definition, a little. If anyone tuned in last week, we talked a little bit about it. We've talked about it on the show, but for any new viewers, could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Okay, so CCUS stands for carbon capture, utilization, and storage. You're going to have your three main phases of that process: capture, transportation, and then either storage, permanent storage downhole, or utilization for enhanced oil recovery.
Gotcha. And what is Tuboscope's role in the CCUS space?
Great question. You mentioned, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, you had Brent and Spencer on.
That's right.
So their group is mostly focused. Well, I don't know about mostly focused, but they're developing some really great products for the actual capture point of it. So whether that's source capture or direct air capture, we're focused mostly on the transportation side via pipeline, and then all your downhole applications, whether it's for permanent storage downhole or utilization for enhanced oil recovery. With our internal coatings for corrosion protection, and then also our connection systems, we're able to really help out the customers on the transportation and storage side.
That's right.
Yeah, it's so the carbon capture and the storage are pretty critical parts of getting to that net zero emissions goal that I think we're all kind of trying to work towards. So it's an exciting time to be a part of the industry and, be involved in all the advancements that we're making right now. But, for us at Tuboscope, we've been working with CO2 gathering systems, EOR systems for about 45 years now. So we have the experience. Wow. And the transition was fairly easy for us. And during that time too, we worked with our customers to help understand what these different environments entail, what's involved, and we were able to evolve over time with our customers as well. So it's been a great process, and I think out of that we've also developed some new products as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing like when we have 45 years. I've heard some of our BUs 50 years, stuff like that. I love those numbers because the oil and gas industry, people forget it's kind of a relatively new-ish industry to the world, that we've been getting energy in this way. And so when it's that amount of decades, that really has some clout. I don't know if that's the right word, but some stronghold and some legitimacy to it there. It's always so exciting to hear. I'm curious, so with those systems over time, what challenges have y'all faced, have y'all come to learn about?
Well, in the carbon capture arena, I think the main challenge we're looking at is corrosion, right?
Mm,
And that's what we specialize in. When you have CO2 in the presence of water, you're going to form carbonic acid, which is going to be corrosive to your pipelines
mhm.
or your downhole tubing. So that's where we come in with our high performance internal coatings. As Eric mentioned, we've been using these coatings in high CO2 environments for decades. So it's not
Mhm.
something new for us. Basically, what we're doing with our coating systems is forming a barrier between your corrosive environment and your asset, whether it's a 20-mile pipeline or a 10,000 foot well in the ground.
Mhm.
In addition to that, our internal coatings have some other added benefits to help out with this carbon capture market.
Mhm.
So we're able to reduce the surface roughness of your application down to about 2 microns. So that's going to help our customers transport more CO2 faster and inject it faster. And then I guess some of our newer technology that Eric was alluding to is
Mhm.
going to be our line of coatings with enhanced abrasion
Mm.
resistance. So when you are dealing with downhole applications, a lot of our customers are worried about running tools and other equipment downhole. So they're able to utilize these products to give you a more robust coating downhole.
Mm. Gotcha. And I wrote a note here. Last week we talked about Class 6 wells, and I was wondering, could
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about EPA requirements for those Class 6 wells, kind of how that pertains to the need for corrosion protection?
Sure. I would say that might be the biggest hurdle we've seen.
Mm,
I'm sure our customers we're working with are also having difficulties there. So for the sequestration side, where you're
mm,
going for permanent storage downhole, you have to file a Class 6 permit with the
mhm.
EPA. From what we're hearing, it's taken the EPA up to a year, maybe even longer, to approve these permits. So our goal right now is to get in front of our customers as quickly as possible so that we're able to spec our products into these permits.
Mm,
Um, to your point about corrosion, though, in the permit verbiage, all it really says is you need some form of corrosion protection.
mm,
It doesn't really specify if that's metallurgy or internal coatings or chemicals.
okay,
So that's allowed us to have these conversations with customers about it.
absolutely. And Eric, could you talk a little bit about how corrosion protection applies when you're looking at the joint or connection?
Yeah, yeah, because that's going to be the second issue they're going to come into
Okay.
play. Yeah, with the ID corrosion, you run into where the pipes meet, right, in that connection area, and that's going to be a critical part of
Mhm.
the string going downhole or the pipeline itself. So at that point, what we do at Tuboscope is we offer a couple different types of connection systems to help prevent corrosion there in those areas.
Mhm.
With pipelines, we offer the Zaplock connection system, which is a mechanical interference connection. And this, we've used this in a lot of different CO2 gathering and
Mm,
injection systems. Again, on the line pipe side. Outside of that, we offer custom coatings for all the fittings throughout the pipeline. And then we offer a through coat sleeve system
mm,
that's used whenever you're welding two pieces of carbon steel pipe together
okay.
that are internally coated. So that helps
Mm,
protect you end to end corrosion protection on line pipe. Now, when we get into OCTG, so the
right.
downhole tubing and casing for the injection strings, we offer what we call the KC connection.
Mm,
And this is a systematic approach to preventing corrosion and erosion there in that J area that you'll find on any string that you're putting down hole. Now, the KC connection's been used in over 1,200 wells, injection CO2 wells.
mm,
So we have the
wow.
experience there. And then most recently, we've been used on a few different monitoring wells for
Mm,
CCUS with some of our customers. Um, they use the KC connection in conjunction with our TK805 product. So we're moving in the right direction.
mhm.
Again, we're helping our customers, again, giving them that full corrosion protection from end to end.
Absolutely. I'm curious, what when we're looking at other materials versus ours, what makes customers come to us versus those other
Yeah,
materials?
good question. Because that's always the challenge, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
something they're faced with. The alternatives would be some higher alloy materials.
Mm,
And then the challenge, though, there is generally speaking, they are more expensive products.
mm,
And even though it's expensive, it's also the availability is a little
Right.
difficult there as well. So those are things that these engineers have to weigh out and understand, pros and cons. But again, I feel like here at Tuboscope, we offer a lot of great benefits to still using carbon steel and being able to protect in that way and in a more cost-effective manner.
Absolutely. I was wondering, before we move on, we have
Mhm.
an image we're showing to them. This has a lot of the kind of product lines. Is that right? Could you talk to this image a little bit that they're seeing?
Sure. I mean, so what you're seeing here is that the three-phase process, right?
Mhm.
So you're seeing the capture area. I think in this image, it's showing, a refinery or a chemical plant. And then you're seeing the CO2 being transferred via pipeline. And that's where we can come in with our internal coatings. And then as Eric was mentioning, the Zap-Lock connection or the through-coat sleeve if they're looking to weld. And then it also shows here both a storage site where you're injecting CO2 downhole for permanent storage, or some of our customers are going to utilize that CO2 to
Mhm.
inject downhole for enhanced oil recovery. So this just kind of breaks down all of our products and services we're currently offering in this area.
Right, absolutely. I want to ask you kind of the same question about
Mhm.
why customers might come to us. So I know I've seen kind of trust as being something. Can you talk a little bit
Sure.
to that?
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, transporting and handling CO2 is not new for us.
Hmm.
Been doing it for over 45 years. We actually developed our first coating over 75 years ago. So
Mm.
we're very familiar with this area. And so a lot of these companies who are getting into carbon capture are oil and gas companies that we've been working with for a long period of time. So there's that trust built in. They've used
Right.
our products, they've seen the performance. So in addition to, field history and case studies, we also have all sorts of laboratory testing that we've done on these coatings, autoclave testing at high temperatures, high pressures with 100% CO2 and
Mhm.
water. So we have the data to also back it up, which
Right.
really comes into play for those Class 6 permits. These
Yeah.
engineers want to see data that they can show the EPA, hey, this is going to work for you. And then I'd be remiss to not hit on the fact that we are also a fully integrated coating company.
Mm.
So basically that means we develop all of our coatings in-house, we manufacture them in-house, and then we apply them at our coating facilities.
Right.
So we're able to control the quality of that product all the way from raw material to
Mm.
application. And that's something a lot of our customers really appreciate, and that's what they're looking for in these high-profile projects.
Hmm. Absolutely. And speaking of kind of the conversation and different people involved in CCUS, can you all talk a little bit of, I know we have the CCUS Expo coming up, and will y'all be there, or can y'all talk to?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Can you talk a little bit about what folks maybe who are going there want to continue the CCUS conversation, where to, what they can, find y'all, or what will be
Sure. I
there?
mean, we'll have a
Mhm.
booth set up at the
Right.
conference. So I'll try not to spend too much time at the booth, but you can find me wandering around.
Right.
But there's going to be some great papers presented at that conference. I know Brent with our low carbon solutions team is going to be a part of a panel, I believe. So I would recommend everybody go listen to that and see all the products and services we're currently offering in this area. But I think it'll be a great showing, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good place to come by, like Reza said, and kind of showcase our products and
Mhm.
be able to see kind of firsthand what we're talking about, have a little deeper discussion on different things.
Right.
So that face-to-face is always good to
Yeah.
interaction is good to have
Absolutely.
since COVID's kind of pushed
Taking
out a
that
little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really nice. Like you mentioned, we had Brent and Spencer last time. We'll have you guys there. Y'all will all be there. So people could kind of talk to different folks at different stages of CCUS and kind of get that whole story, which I think is really interesting.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I while I still have y'all here, we have some audience questions that I want to make sure I give the audience their chance to get those answered. And so the first one, and it actually kind of goes along. I think you mentioned case studies, and that lit somebody up. So a
Mhm.
user on Twitter was wondering if there was any case studies you could share. And I know, just me personally, I think I read something about was it TK70 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could maybe talk about that one.
Yeah, we've actually already participated in the carbon capture arena. This was several years ago. It was one of the first projects of its kind. It was called the Petronova project. where they were doing source capture at a coal power plant.
Mhm.
And so basically, we helped them with internally coating the pipeline. I want to say it was maybe 10 to 20 miles of pipeline that we helped internally coat and protect. And then we also coated the tubing string that went down hole. They were using the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, but it was one of the first projects of its time. So we already have that experience. Like you said, it's a case study. We'd be happy to share.
Yeah.
And we look forward to, participating in more of these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next question we got, this was actually several questions I'm kind of combining into one, but a lot of questions on location or where. So could you talk about maybe where some of these applications have been used?
Yeah, most of them are going to be here in Texas, and then also we have some other ones in Louisiana right now. So it's fairly local.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a lot of carbon capture going on in the Midwest right now. Ethanol facilities are a big highlight right now. So we are working with some customers over there. And then, of course, overseas. Europe is starting to get heavily involved in this, the Middle East. And then we are working with a few companies up in Canada as well. So it's really becoming, very popular in this industry. And, we're trying to basically, stay relevant, catch up with it.
Absolutely. I was saying last week with Brenton Spencer that, before I feel like the last few years I've been trying to tell my friends whenever they're like, we need to go be more green. I'm like, look into carbon capture. It's really interesting. And there's a lot going on. And it's just now reached the point where some podcasts that I listen to that are totally unrelated to the industry, they're, pop culture type ones, where they've started being like, have you ever heard of this thing called carbon capture? And I'm like, it's getting out there, more people. So I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of becoming more part of the conversation, which is so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, not only are we trying to achieve to become carbon neutral, but it's also new technology, and that's going to make it exciting, right? It's something new that Eric and I have just been diving into probably the past 2 years. So it's still relatively new to us, and we're still learning as a company. But I think that's what makes it exciting right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we did get another question, which I love questions like this where they're a little bit more on the technical side. So we had a user on, I think this came from YouTube. What are some of your temperature and or pressure limitations? I love when they get technical.
From the coating standpoint, we have coatings that are rated up to, we actually have one coating that's rated up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Several others that are going to be rated up to 400. As far as pressure, we've used these products in offshore applications where they're seeing pressures as high as 20,000 psi. You're really not going to see that in the carbon capture area. We're seeing temperatures typically below 200 Fahrenheit and then around 5,000 psi. So it shouldn't be an issue for any of our coating systems.
Yeah, same for the connection side. We're always going to be equal to or greater than what the actual coatings can withstand. So where the field they play in, we're always pretty safe.
Right. That kind of makes me think of something that I've thought of a lot with when it comes to NOV and this kind of the renewables space at large, not just CCUS, but a lot of the other arenas as well, is that, we're experts in a lot of the products. We've been doing connections and coatings for a lot longer than maybe the CCUS technology has been part of it. And so we know we're doing a lot of times our technology can withstand higher than what a lot of these renewables really need. So I think that's kind of exciting. It's like, well, of course, it's a natural fit that we can also adapt to that.
I think it's something Tuboscope's done a pretty good job of is staying ahead in regards to technology and the R&D and the development that we do or that we put into our coatings and then connection systems as well. But staying ahead of the curve is always important, especially in our industry. So they've done a great job. I'm happy to be a part of it. It makes conversations a little easier sometimes. But it's exciting. Like I said, it's exciting time to be a part of the industry and working through all this.
Absolutely. And I want to keep y'all here so I can, when I reveal the trivia question, if y'all have anything y'all want to add to it, feel free to hop in. So I want to reveal that really quickly. We asked at the beginning of the show the question, what is the total annual cost of corrosion in the oil and gas industry? And that number in a dollar amount, of course. And I might get this acronym wrong. Is it NACE or NACE?
NACE.
NACE.
Yeah.
Okay.
It used to be called NACE. Now it's called AMP, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm any of those acronyms I messed up. But this is where we got the information, and the answer is $1.3 billion is the total annual cost of corrosion in the oil and gas industry. And I guess as a closing question, can you explain a little bit about what that means for us and for the coatings and connections?
Sure. I mean, when you do have these corrosion related failures, that's just going to lead to, mostly non-productive time, right? If you do have a failure downhole, you're not going to be able to be producing oil or gas or injecting CO2, whether that's downhole or via pipeline. Obviously, we've all seen, pipeline failures out in the field. So obviously corrosion can be very costly. So that's why Eric and I, are so busy all the time, I guess.
Yeah, it does keep us busy, that's for sure. But mitigating that corrosion is very important. It's an important part of the the process and everything that happens. And again, it's something that needs to be taken care of. So we're here to help.
Jinx. Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. And like we mentioned before, if people want to talk to you in person, they can do that. The 28th and 29th of June at the Carbon Capture, what is it, Expo?
Technology Expo.
Technology Expo. Yeah. There we go. I got there. So thank you both so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And thank you everybody for watching online, as well as our production crew today. We had Wei Han Lin, Laura Marple, and Amy Rasmussen. So thank you so much for joining us. I've been your host today. My name is Shelby Dumaine, and we'll talk to you next week.